Welcome to Spring Office Hours, Season 3, Episode 8, Resources for Learning Spring. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined as always by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun. DaShaun, how are you doing, my friend?
I am having a wonderful day. It has already just been great conversations. I get excited. I love hearing what you, the community, are doing. And yeah, it's great. I love this job. I love what we do. And today's on the right track. How about you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm good. We're going to have fun today. So we kind of had this idea of, we often get asked, like, what's the best way to learn Spring? We'll talk about that a little bit today. But what we wanted to do was kind of put together a resource for learning Spring, like all the different resources that might be available to you. And we're going to do this kind of in an interactive form. We could have done this beforehand and got in here and said, this is it. This is our list. But I think it's better if we kind of do this interactive with our community and say, here are some categories. Here are some of my favorite resources in that category, and get the input from everyone that is here joining us live. That's right. We do a live stream on Monday from 1 to 2 Eastern. But we also go ahead and turn this into a podcast. So if you want to get us on the go, in the car, on the treadmill, you can get us wherever you get your podcasts.
I
And
love seeing
so,
everybody here. Like it's so
yeah,
great. Like we have our regulars that come in. I love seeing new people. If you're new, you're joining us. Drop in the chat. Let us know where you're from. Hello. This is wonderful. It's my favorite part of the week for sure.
cool. So what have you been up to? What did you do last week? Anything fun?
Uh, yeah. This is a tough question on the spot. Like what last week was fun. I remember at the beginning of the week something happened. We had great conversations, moving things forward. I really get excited about customers, community, getting over a hurdle, right? Getting
Yep.
something new, finding a new path. I think I got really excited about some of the CFP responses. I know that there's some conferences that are
Yep.
coming up that have some really
Yep.
amazing content that I'm absolutely looking forward to. So that was it. But I also, last week, I have some of these small pockets of community that they were asking about this. And last week, I was really thankful that I've got a relationship with you. I kind of know most of your library, and I was able to recommend your videos and get like a high five. That was perfect. And I get these little feedbacks like, that was exactly what I needed. It was at this
Nice.
timestamp and this video. I
That's
love
awesome.
that. So these kind of
Yeah.
things, they get me excited. And that's one of the parts that I love about this job.
Yeah. Cool. So I was pretty busy last week. I decided on a whim, well, not on a whim, maybe a couple weeks ago, to put together a course for Free Code Camp. So I was looking at Free Code Camp, and I was like, wow, there's a lot. I love like all the courses on that platform, but I was like, there isn't a lot of Spring content on there, and there isn't a lot of up to date Spring content, right? So I thought, let's put together a course on Spring Boot 3.x, whatever the latest version is now, and really kind of talk about some of the latest features. So I was able to put some code together, and then last week record and edit and basically publish a 3.5 hour course on Spring Boot 3. So that was a little bit stressful and fun, but I really wanted to get it done last week. So I got it done. It was submitted to them. They will publish it when they publish it. I don't know what their schedule's like. He said could be soon, could be in the next few weeks. We're not sure yet. So
Well, we'll keep an eye out for that for sure.
yeah, so that'll be fun. I was also, we're big fans of Spring Academy. We'll probably talk about that in our resources. I am now an official instructor on Spring Academy. I have two guides up
Yes.
there.
That's excellent.
So that was fun. I was working with the Spring Academy team. We took some of my videos and turned them into guides. So now, like, you can follow the video and do the thing interactively in the browser, which is, I think, a lot of fun. So cool. So yeah, as always, get your questions in. If you're live here, I saw some people asking earlier, like, how can we get our questions in? Yeah, just type them in the chat.
Just ask.
We'll see if we can't get to them. And if you are not here live in the chat, you can always find us, springofficehours.io. You can find DaShaun on Twitter or X. I never know what to call it these days. You can
Zitter.
find
Yeah. That other
Zitter.
site.
Yeah. So you can find us. Feel free to reach out to us and ask us questions, and we'll see if we can't get them on the show. Today, we'll get into our resources, but I have a couple things I wanted to chat about first as far as like what's happening in the world of Spring. Part of our contract with this show, DaShaun, is hey, we're going to keep you up to date with everything that's happening in the Spring ecosystem, right?
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. We want to make sure we keep you informed. And so one of those places that we do this at is calendar.spring.io. This is a really good resource to find out what is getting released in the Spring ecosystem. There's so many projects. So if you want to find out what's going on there, this is a good place to do so. Spring AI 0.8.1 will be released later this week. I have some more news on Spring AI in a second. And then I don't know if you noticed this, but way down here, it looks like we're getting closer to a 1.0 release of Spring AI. So that
It's right around the corner.
is very exciting. Yeah. So that's calendar.spring.io. Check it out if you have not seen that before. Speaking of Spring AI, DaShaun, this happened last week. If you wanted to, and in fact, we had Craig on the show last week, and we talked to Craig about Spring AI and all the things happening there. And I remember he said, I think I heard that they are going to release the starters on the Spring Initializer soon. So in
Which is
fact,
awesome.
go on here and type
We're
in
not
AI.
even at 1.0, and the
Yeah.
starters are there.
So there you go. If you want to use OpenAI with Spring AI, boom, it's there. So this makes not having to do that dance of going into the documentation, figure out like which dependencies to pull, which repositories you got to pull in. So that's really great to see. Yeah, and I'm excited about this because I have some upcoming presentations on some of the Spring AI stuff. This makes it so much easier to like follow along. Another blog post I wanted to kind of point out, the support timeline announcement for Spring Framework 6.0 and 5.3.x from Jürgen Haller. Just talking about the support timelines. And I don't know, DaShaun, do you want to talk to kind of open source support, commercial support?
Yeah. So here's the thing: the Spring projects keep on moving forward, and sometimes it's hard to look back and maintain. The Spring team is they love their job and they do a great job of it, but sometimes there's some overlap, and sometimes there's some efficiencies that can be made by saying, "Hey, let's adjust timeframes." So, and this is one of those cases. So it's a good read, and I don't think it's a real like. It shouldn't affect anybody like today. So this is one of those things. Like we want you to be aware that there are some changes, and it's going to matter. The closer you are to the front, to the green, to the new stuff that's being released, the better in general. This one's kind of looking backwards a little bit. There's a new Spring Boot version coming out every 6 months. There's a new Spring Framework version that comes out every year. Each project under the Spring umbrella has its own calendar for support. So this is addressing that calendar, and there's some slight changes, not overly significant, but it's worth taking a look at.
Cool. All right. So again, that is on the spring.io blog. Great place to stay caught up with everything that's going on. I have one more from the blog. I think I mentioned this last week or 2 weeks ago, but I knew this was coming. So Spring for GraphQL 1.3 milestone 1 has been released. Some exciting stuff there around a synchronous GraphQL client based on the REST client. There's a DGS GraphQL client. So there's this DGS, which is this code generation from Netflix. That is now part of the Spring Initializer, so you can pick that. There's now a GraphQL client there. And also Apollo Federation. So I will have to admit that I've seen these announcements, but I am yet to play with this. I am going to hopefully do that later this week and get a little bit more familiar with some of these things, especially the Apollo Federation. I'm curious about that to see how that works. And I will share my findings somehow. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a show coming up soon with kind of some of the new things in GraphQL. Maybe there'll be videos. We'll figure it out. But I'm going to learn. That's my process. Learn and then teach back to you guys. So
there's a question here from one of our new guests saying, hey, can I start putting my questions? The value of having this as a live stream, the value of having this community that shows up here is you ask your questions in the live chat. what I'd like to say is if you come to my house for dinner and you leave hungry, that's your fault. If you come here to the live stream and you've got questions and you don't ask them, that's your fault. We have an amazing community that's joining us. Sometimes we've got members of the Spring team that are here. If they are, they will jump in and answer. So get your questions asked. If we don't address it in the amount of time that we have, that's okay. Somebody else from the community might be able to address it for you. That happens here more than I can count. So yes, absolutely. Ask your questions in the chat and we'll get to it if we can. And if not, hopefully somebody from the community is able to help as well. So yes, absolutely ask your question.
Cool. So those were really the highlights for me, like what's in the news. So yeah, I figured we could. Oh, go ahead.
I want to retract what I said. I said it wasn't anything overly significant. The significance of the Spring framework release timeline, it's going to be significant depending on where you are on that and what your expectations were. So let me retract that statement where it wasn't overly significant. I assume that the community that's here is trying to get into the green. They're trying to get on the front. They are part of the OSS community and they want to stay at the front. And that's just kind of the assumption I go in here. So I assume that you're not looking back and worried about stuff that was released in the years past that you're trying to move forward. So yeah, take a look. And if you've got questions, you know how to get a hold of us. Yep,
for sure. All right. So our topic for today is resources for learning Spring. I think we've talked about this a lot on the show in the past, and you know we often get questions like, how do I learn Spring? And that's like an impossible question to answer, right? Because Spring can do so many things. But yes, where do I start? What are some good resources to get started? So we're going to kind of give some blanket resources when we say learn Spring. A book might teach you a lot about Spring, like an overview and teach you all the things about Spring. A reactive Spring book might teach you just about reactive. So these are really just kind of general, like, hey, these are some good resources that we really like. But what we want to do with this is kind of have this as a collaboration with everybody who's here in the live chat. For those of us who are not in the live chat, we're going to do this like drawing and kind of put all these resources together. We're going to turn this into a GitHub repo. So our community that is catching this on the replay, catching this on the podcast, they can go ahead and submit some PRs to this as well. Like, hey, I really enjoyed this particular resource for this reason. And I think this will be a good resource for us to just continually grow. And again, we get so many questions. Now we can kind of hand this resource off to those who are asking that question. So we're gonna have our friend DaShaun here use his mad drawing skills as an Excalibur skills today.
I am amazing at drawing. So just be prepared. This is going to look so amazing. You're going to want to show your kids. But we've already talked about two. We've already kind of talked about two. I'm going to bring this up. Spring Academy. We already talked about Spring Academy. When people ask me, where do I start? That's where I send them. There's a bunch of free courses that you can go in and get started with. And again, especially if you're just starting, right? A lot of times it's like, where do I start? How do I get upgraded the fastest? I always say start with spring.academy because you don't need anything else, right? A lot of the content that's there, you can do it on the platform itself. It has a JVM, it has an IDE. You can go and it's so easy to adopt. You can do it from your iPad. So that's where I always start. All
right. I figured we could maybe make some buckets. Let's start with some categories, and then we can like fill in some of these resources in these buckets. So I thought a good place to start would be Spring Official, right? These are official Spring resources. And now I don't know if we want to split official Spring resources into like general Spring and then documentation, or does documentation really fall under Spring Official?
I think there's two, right?
I think so too.
Yeah, the documentation is a great place to go.
Right, period. But there's so many documentations, right? Like I'm thinking of like, I mean, we're not going to list them all here, but like you can think about like the Spring Framework reference, the Spring Framework API, the Spring Boot reference, the Spring Boot API. Like those are four like really great places or documentation like destinations to start at. Now we know every project has documentation, but I don't know if I want to list those all right here.
Yeah, do I have this right? The other like the thing. I use it as an RSS feed. But the other part of how do I keep up with what's going on? The Spring IO blog.
Yep, for sure.
So
yeah, I think those are really good. Like, hey, official, right?
yeah.
So yeah, let's do.
There's kind of like another one here, right? We talked about the free code camp, so I'm gonna put that over here. Right, that's been kind of a staple in the community for a long time. And you have, Dan, upcoming 3.5.
Upcoming, yeah, not there yet.
Course. But one of the other conversations that I've been having a lot with the community is like, I lean here, I lean into the Spring official stuff, but then they're always like, but what about over on this platform? And what about over here? And what about this thing? And everybody that's gone through it, feedback is amazing, right? The people that are creating this content care about your feedback, and that's an important thing. But for me and the community that I'm trying to serve, there's no way that I can go and try all the cereals in the cereal aisle.
Yeah,
there's no way for me to do that. But I love the Spring community and the people that are closest to the Spring community. And I'm kind of a lead at the front, stay on the latest and greatest kind of person. So when I'm sharing content, I want proximity. I'm going to say proximity, right? I lean into content from Dan, right? YouTube. That's where I said a lot of people. Josh, YouTube, blog, right? GitHub, right? Like these are, right? And that's all of this, right? Like this is where I go. And the reason that I lean into those repositories and what you guys are delivering is because of your proximity to what we're doing here at the Spring, inside of the Spring team. Why wouldn't you want to go to the source or as close to the source as possible? There's no way for us to get into all of like the your pattern that you're using and you're adopting. We can only cover so much in a platform like Spring Academy. We want to get the basics. We want to get you to a point where you understand how this framework and how this ecosystem works. But then the special, the cool, the what's coming, the new stuff, where maybe there's not an accepted pattern or there's 5. That's where we go to you, Dan, to Josh, to Cora. That's where we go to get that, hey, here's a special use case that might be interesting to you. That's what I'm talking about here.
Cool. All right, so I have some other like broad buckets. Let me know what you think of them. So I think like books, books, blogs, podcasts, YouTube.
Books. Right. Oh yeah, those, there you go. There's good. One of the things that we talked about early on is like when you're searching for content, and I made the reference to the cereals and the cereal aisle, you can have 15 different videos about the same topic, 15 different blogs about the same topic. And we know, especially when your community is millions of people strong, we know that it is important to have different types of cereal for different people. Different people learn different ways.
For sure.
And hey, we don't all eat Wheaties, right?
Yeah.
Right. Some of us like Fruit Loops, this guy. Some of us like Fruity Pebbles, this guy, right? But everybody learns in a different way. So it's okay. Even though it's cereal, it's okay to have a bunch of options on the shelf. So I'm encouraging you, if you're learning different, you've got these different ways of learning. Maybe you like reading books.
Right.
Let's jump in. We have books, YouTubes.
So let's do books, YouTube, podcasts, maybe
job,
blogs. Yeah.
Hey, you're opening.
So somebody mentioned it in the comments already. Baldung's blog is really great. There's a great resource there. So maybe we'll throw that on there. And as you're in the chat, I mean, we want this to be interactive here. So please recommend one of these buckets, recommend another category. We be happy to throw this in here.
Yeah, I'm gonna show my bias. I'm putting at Dan Vega at it's coffee software, and of course at Spring Source Dev.
Oh,
fantastic.
while we're on YouTube, my friend Java Brains, I love that channel. He has a lot of really great content on YouTube.
Oh, I
Me,
know another guy. Yeah,
DaShaun has,
yeah.
yeah,
Every
and you
once in a
know what?
while.
I didn't know if we should distinguish. Hey, here's YouTube because YouTube's video, right?
Right.
But there's also some live streamers out there like Jitter Ted and
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
our friend DaShaun. That's not
Right. We
specifically
all
YouTube.
learn different, right? And I think by putting right Jitter Ted, by putting Jitter Ted on there, like we open the door to all the other things that Jitter Ted does. These are
Yeah.
yeah, these are great places. I think there's one more that I want to put on here. Is
Um,
it Pro Coder Live? Is that what he's at now?
oh yeah.
Pro Coder Live.
That's our good friend, Greg Turnquist.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a big fan of Amigos Code, who's
Oh
on
yeah. Yep.
YouTube. Obviously the Spring Developer YouTube channel, but should we put that under Spring Official or under YouTube?
I'm putting here. Let's move that.
Oh yeah, Spring Source. Gotcha.
We'll do that. But yeah.
All right. Do I have any else? Yeah, so the spring tips are underneath there. So I don't know this is not an exhaustive list by any means. We'd be here all day. We're just trying to kind of give you some resources for learning Spring.
Yes.
Somebody said I found the DigitalOcean tutorials to be well written.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say yeah, and they're not maybe Spring centric, but I will say over the years the DigitalOcean, they have been a good source for something. I guarantee I've got some bookmarks of their tutorials over there that I would agree. I have seen some really solid.
I absolutely agree. But I'm wondering if there's anything Spring related, because if there isn't,
it's right. It's kind of more
yeah.
to prod stuff.
There is.
As a Spring developer, I lean into there.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I see some Spring content there, so we can keep it. I like it.
Is it digitalocean.com? Is there like a blog tutorial? I'll find it. But let's keep going.
DigitalOcean. Yeah, just digitalocean.com.
All right.
Okay. Blogs. Let me think of some other blogs that I really love. Again, we're just kind of putting this together, so feel free to jump in. What is that? Refactorings by Thomas. Oh, we had our good friend on last week talking about testing. What is his blog? Well, I'll get to that in a second.
Yep.
So Phil Breeks has a blog. Ah, great. Yes. Yeah, Cora's been doing some really cool stuff on there. Just kind of sharing these little nuggets, and I've really enjoyed those.
Right. So I am quoting Cora when, we lots of people say it, but I'm quoting Cora when I say containers are the new artifacts. You've heard me say that before, right? She's got such a great way of presenting content. She goes deep, and when she is presenting them, she knows the edges. She knows where the community is needing to pay attention, and she does such a good job.
Okay, I found the one I was looking for, which is reflectoring.io. This is from Thomas Holmberg. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correct. Holmberg.
Which one you're talking about?
Yeah, really great resource. And it's not just Thomas, because I know he has like other writers on that site. So that's why I'm going to say the site name, which is Reflectoring. I always end up there to like talk about, I always end up there when I'm searching for stuff. So that's a good one. Do we got Philip on there?
Oh, I'm looking for it still.
Philip Reeks. Yeah, so it's just RIECKPIL.DE.
Did I get it?
Yeah, that looks good.
Perfect.
Yeah, now obviously the Spring blog is one, but we have that under Spring Official. I'm trying to think.
Keep them coming. We got some blogs.
Oh, I got our friend who's actually in the chat with us today, Siva Labs. So let's put
Yeah.
that under a blog too. So that's just SIVALABDLABS.IN.
.in.
Yep.
Right. So when I think of Siva, I think of that like I've got some GitHubs
Yeah. Oh, that's a really
that
good
I
thing too.
subscribe to. That
Yeah.
like, hey, when Siva does something, like I've copied Siva stuff too many times to mention. Like when I think of how I'm learning, I subscribe to like GitHub, and I'm looking at people's repositories as a way of staying current and staying up to date with what's going on, seeing those new patterns. So I'm going to put Steve up there, but he's also one of those repositories that I really like to, pay attention to.
What is his blog?
I'm gonna put some of these GitHubs over here that I'm subscribed to.
Here's another really good blog that I often end up on, which is Pietor's tech blog.
Oh yeah, yep.
He has some really great content there. Especially around Spring. He does a whole bunch of things with Java, so that's kind of a general one, but he has a lot of great content on Spring.
Fantastic.
So
I'm just trying to think, like the places where I find myself, where I'm going. These are some good ones that you might want to bookmark. You might want to put these into your bookmarks as, and here's a category, right? For how to learn Spring, here's a category. And we're making your bookmarks easy. Here's some Spring Official that you might want to put at the top. Here's some YouTube links for Spring content. Here's some blogs for Spring content. Like, this is fantastic. I like this.
Can we go to the Spring Official? Maybe we should add the GitHub for Spring projects there, because that's kind of like the overarching, everything's there. And again, like learning from GitHub, that's a really good place to go through and learn some things. So
it's okay to subscribe to these. I think the other one is. I think there's one. We'll find podcasts. What podcasts come to mind?
Beautiful podcast, of course. Well, that and Spring Office Hours, of course.
Yeah, beautiful podcast. Spring Office Hours. I would add one of my favorites to listen to. I like the way Greg delivers. Where did I put it? Procoder. So I normally catch that when he's doing it live, but I like the way Greg delivers content.
Yeah, Greg is the best.
What else? When you think of podcasts, I think of beautiful podcasts. I'm gonna go and look at my phone and see if there's any other Spring-centric ones that I pay attention to. I'm gonna look at this one.
Yeah, and this is where I struggle. Like, is it very specific to Spring, or like I know I love
share. We're Spring developers. This is where we go.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Inside Java podcast. So that could be relevant to Spring developers.
Absolutely.
Because we talk a lot about Java content on there. So I love that podcast. That one's really interesting because they pick like this one thing and do like a really big deep dive into it with the engineers or at Oracle talking about that specific feature, which is really cool.
The only other one that I think fits for this audience is InfoQ.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Right, there's a lot of good Spring content on InfoQ.
Ooh, another category, conferences. That's a good way to learn Spring. And so just thinking about that, Spring I/O in Barcelona, Spring 1 in Las Vegas.
Well, I have a big three. Spring 1 Conf.
Well, and we'll say
I/O.
Spring 1 at VMware Explore, because I believe that's... Oh yeah,
Like,
Dev Nexus for sure.
that's my like that's my big three.
Yep.
There's
We can
tons
add
of others.
DevOps.
For me, I'm being very biased. There's tons of others,
Yeah.
but those are my big three. But also, you got your Java user group. Don't overlook the
Yeah.
Java user groups that are in your community, because there's tons. But there's also tons of great conferences, and we could go on for days for the amount of.
Somebody said Josh Long equals Spring. Of course. We have
Pretty much.
Josh's on his YouTube channel is Coffee Software. That's
Yep.
up near the top of our YouTube list
Did I
there.
do that right? Let me make sure I did. I got the right handle. Yep, I did.
Yeah, it should be Coffee Software.
Yep.
And then Josh will post on the Spring.io blog a lot. So a lot of his stuff is there and on the YouTube, the Spring Developer official YouTube channel. So yeah, lots of stuff going on there.
Podcast, books, right? We just talked about Josh. There's a couple of books that I recommend a lot, right? There's the Reactive Java from Josh.
Yep. I have Spring Boot in Action by Craig Walls.
Which secret between us friends here, this is the book that I listen to the most because I like the way, like, even though I listen to the audiobook and it's not him speaking, but it's written by him and it's his voice. So when even though I'm hearing somebody else speak it, I'm getting all of the Craig Walls out of it. But I literally listen to this one like I used to do Josh Long's videos on YouTube. Now I listen to Craig Walls' books on whatever my audio app is, my book app, when I go to bed. Just plays throughout the night.
Oh, somebody beat me to it. Yep. So I have two there. I was going to say this one too, Learning Spring Boot 3 by Greg Turnquist. That's sitting on the bookshelf back there. Love that one. And our old friend Mark Heckler, Spring Boot Up and Running.
I was typing it before you even said it. We were on the same page, my friend.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Thomas Vitale's book. What's the title?
Oh yes, Cloud Native Spring, right? Is it Cloud Native? Let me just look on my bookshelf because I have that. Yes, Cloud Native Spring in Action.
There you go. It was the in action. Cloud.
And I also want to add Spring Security in Action to that list by Lors. There is a version 2 coming out of that, and I've got a little sneak peek of that, and I'm going through that now. So I'm really enjoying that.
So I'm looking through. There's a bunch of stuff here. Yes. Yep. Java Zone. We could go on for days, for weeks on that list. I'm going to mention Java Zone. But yeah, what's the other? Right, the path to production stuff. I normally, depending on where you are in your journey, I go from, hey, here's the Spring that I do on my laptop to here's the Spring that I'm running in production. And what that means, I'm a DevOps fan. So would I put a DevOps bucket, a DevOps days bucket? Would that be a conference that you'd go to as a Spring developer?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, DevOps in general, they have different.
DevOps. Wait,
yeah.
Is that right?
DV, is it 2?
Yeah, it's like this, right? DevOps.
DEVOXX, yeah.
DevOps. All right, and then there's different locations.
Yeah, locations and different.
I
don't know. I still have not been invited to one of their conferences. Right. I'm not bitter at all, DaShaun.
I'm an organizer for DevOps Days Kansas City.
Nice.
And there's DevOps Days all over the globe. And yeah, my journey, the DevOps Days community, the DevOps community helped me be a better Spring developer on that path of production. So,
right.
Yeah.
Speaking of Kansas City, KCDC, not a Java conference, but there's awesome. A Java track there. And I am really excited to be there for the 3rd year in a row this year. So We get to talk Java. We get to have some good barbecue. Oh, I can't wait. So, there's a new one coming later this year, Dev to Next, put on by Vencat, which is a Java conference, but there will be Spring content there. And yes, this is the problem with this one
Is it like this?
as you said, it's like one word, lowercase dev to next, but yeah.
With the number 2 or TO?
Yeah, number 2. And then just a lowercase d. But yes, we are not shutting anyone out of this. We will make this bigger in the repo, I think, once we get to it. But there are so many conferences, we could add a whole bunch to that list. Here's a book recommendation, Professional Java Development with Spring Framework. I don't know that I've seen that one yet.
I saw that one recently.
Let me see. Professional.
There's so much good stuff. There is so much good stuff out there.
I see. Yeah.
One of the things is like, where do you start? Where do you recommend somebody?
This I read that the wrong way. I thought this was something else. This is by Rod Johnson. I knew that book. I was like, wait, is that a new one?
Wait a minute. It sounds familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. It only started everything. There's another question here. Which is the best YouTube channel to learn about Spring Cloud? Mm-hmm. So I will say, I don't think there's a dedicated Spring Cloud, but if you look through that list, like especially on the Spring Developer YouTube channel, there's a ton of content by Josh there on everything. You can listen to stuff on the podcast. DaShaun, I don't know if you realize this, but if you go to Spring, I think we talked about this last week, but if you go to spring.io and then the projects page for Spring Cloud, our podcast video was listed on there where we talked about like the overview of all the different things.
That's fantastic.
So that was really cool. I would say you're not going to find a single channel that talks about Spring Cloud, but if you find some of the top YouTube accounts talking about Java and Spring, you should be able to find some content on there. So
it does make me think though, if there should be some more Spring Cloud dedicated content, because, and maybe it's just been lately on my radar, the conversations that I have during the week, there's a lot of conversations about, but what about in the cloud, and how do I make it so that when we're in GCP and we're in AWS and we got 15 data centers, how do we make that experience for a developer, for our operators, how do we make that consistent? And Spring Cloud is the answer, but we don't have like the same level of patterns that we have for cloud as we have for some of the other things like around Spring Data and Spring AI.
Right.
So maybe I need to, maybe maybe I've just been poked. Maybe I've just been poked to let's deliver some Spring Cloud focused content.
Yeah.
Because it has been.
I would say do it on your channel. Mm-hmm. But like creating a whole YouTube channel for just Spring Cloud is going to be really hard because that's the way the YouTube algorithm works, and it'd just be tough to
it'll live
get
here.
people there.
But maybe I need to level up some of that content or refresh some of that content. But thanks. This is why we like having a community. This is why we like having the office hours. Office hours, the concept, in my head, it's not a one-way street. As much as I want to be delivering value to you, but I also want you, the community, to be giving us feedback and letting us know what works. Where do you go when you've got questions? Where do you go? What are your favorite conferences? What are the podcasts that you listen to while you're mowing the lawn or going for a walk? Like, we want to get that so that we can share it with everybody else. Love this.
Ooh, should we put Pet Clinic somewhere? Does that go like under Spring Official?
I think it has its own repo, right? But yeah, like fantastic. Wait.
Oh, someone else I want to mention too is Marco Beeler. Marco Codes.
That's over here.
I would put him there. Yeah, and his website is really good, so I would put him under a blog too.
Awesome. Is it marcocodes.com?
It's Marco Beeler.
Marco, B-O-E-H, right?
B-E-H-L-E-R. Yeah, I actually just came out with a guide too that I have not had a chance to go through that I saw on Twitter, but he put together a what is Kubernetes guide,
Oh,
and
right on.
there's really good info on there. Need to go through that. I'm trying to think.
So there's
So
I've
we
got
met,
I've
we
got 100 GitHub repos that I'm following. They all got big stuff. I'm just gonna say in general, if you find something, if you've got a project that you're using, like make sure you give it a star, right? Make sure that you give it a follow. Following stuff in
yep.
GitHub is actually a great way to learn. These are a couple places to go.
So I mentioned Lara's book on Spring Security in Action. He has a great YouTube channel as well. So I put Lara in there. And again, we are not excluding anyone.
No,
This is
so
very
much
tough
more.
to come up with on the spot. We just thought we'd kind of do this interactively. So,
Yeah.
and for those of you at home, make sure if you're listening to this on the podcast, make sure you come back and check out the replay of the video just to see this nice diagram of all these things we're doing. And again, we'll kind of get this together and wrap this up in a GitHub repo somewhere for later on.
Yeah. Like, and here's another. What about Twitter/X accounts? Where do we stop?
Yeah, that's
There's
going to be
some
tough.
folks that are on Twitter and Mastodon and Threads, and some people are moving around. And I honestly don't know like where's the best source to go. Right? Some people have moved, and some people are. I'd almost before I did the social account stuff, I'd almost want to go and ask like, hey, Josh, where do you want people to be following you? Like,
Right.
hey, Marco, where do you want people? Cora, where do you want people to be following? Where's the best resource for a Spring community? Because you probably have multiple channels that you're sharing. That's a hard one. That's a hard question to answer, and that could be its own list for sure.
That's a lot.
But here's the thing: if we're trying to learn Spring, if we're trying to learn, and we're in this process of continuous learning, like this is a great way to start. Like if you're looking to start and you're trying to get off the ground, or you're like, hey, maybe Spring's not for me, and you want to get started, definitely Spring.Academy, right? And all the helping resources. You can't get a better spot than the official, right? I want everybody to know like the difference. I'm gonna do this. No, maybe not. Like I want you to know, like, hey, some people are closer to Spring than others, right? Dan, Josh, Cora, like. I when I'm recommending, I'm putting them at the top. Plus the Spring engineers, right? Craig's, right? Michael's book on Spring Batch. Like they're putting out amazing books and content, and it's hard to get better content than what's coming from the people that are developing it. And understanding how they think really helps. It's helped me by reading their books. It's helped me go forward with what I do.
Ooh, good recommendation. Naveen Reddy's YouTube channel. He's been doing Java and Spring content forever. Telusco.
So this is good. So Dan, like for you, where else do you go when you want content? Like you're not junior dev, you're up here. Where do you go? Who do you lean into? What are your favorite resources?
I was going to say, let's talk about that for a second, because this has definitely changed over the years. Well, also, I'm really old, so resources have changed over the years. But like, if I was brand new today, I know just the way that I think, I would immediately go to like YouTube or some course and watch someone else do it and then try to do it myself, and then go to like the documentation or the official stuff. I think as I've progressed over my career and I have like a better understanding of things, my first place is always the official documentation. Let's check that out. So if I wanted to like learn React, I would go to the React documentation first and say like, what's in here? Can I understand this? Is this up to date? Is this a good like official place to start? And if it isn't, then I might branch out to like a book, like a recent book, right? That's the other thing. Like, all this stuff is changing a lot. So if you want to be like on the latest and greatest, like what are the books that came out recently? If you're reading a blog post, make sure like there's a timestamp on there. And is this recent? But yeah, I think for me, it's changed over the years. Right now, I would go straight to the docs. Then if I don't understand something that I've come across in the docs, maybe I might go look up a blog or a video on like how to use HTTP interfaces in Spring Boot 3.0, right? Which is a video I just put out on Friday. So yeah, that's kind of my approach. What's yours?
I added it, the LinkedIn Spring user group. I'll tell
Oh
you what
yeah,
I do.
great
Like
resource. Yeah,
my little thing. Ted said, "Hey, Java Bubble has a list of X, Twitter, and Mastodon folks to follow."
cool.
So I've definitely seen that. But my default, honestly, is when I am wrapping up for the night and I want to like see like, hey, where's everybody at? This is where I go. I go to the Spring user group on LinkedIn, and I go to my GitHub feed, and I go to X, and I search for hashtag Spring Boot. Those are the things that I do at least daily, sometimes multiple times daily. This is how I'm just kind of like consuming. I'll take things for a spin. I like reading. I like seeing people learning in public. I've made the request to the community like, hey, please use hashtag Spring Boot, because that's how I search. And
Right.
it's a great way. It's an easy way of like combining and searching across an entire ecosystem, whether it's in Mastodon or on LinkedIn or whatever. Using those hashtags is a great way of sharing with the community.
Yep.
So that's my default. That's how I learn. And when I'm doing stuff, I listen to podcasts. I like listening to podcasts when I'm doing other things. I like doing a 2-for-1. I do listen to audiobooks. Actually, let me go look and see if I've got any other. Yeah, I've got some other like DevOps related books that I recommend. But that's on my GitHub. You can go there. But yeah, I like listening to books. So
Yeah, me
this
too.
is how I learn. And I'm consuming your content. I'm consuming the content from the people in and around the Spring team.
I got a comment here from Stig. A newbie will need to learn how to use the official documentation as well. Correct.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying in previous life of mine, that was not my first place to go. I am suggesting that if you can get familiar with, let's go to the documentation first, learn what we need to learn. If for some reason something doesn't click, as DaShaun said, there's a video on that by 10 different people. One of those people may kind of click with you in explaining the way that particular feature works.
Yep.
So yeah, great comment.
Jitter Ted, and Alexander kind of had these good comments. Jitter says like, hey, for actual learning, and Jitter Ted, I've talked about it before. He likes to think out loud, and he does a lot of live streaming. I am one that learns by watching others do things live. I like hearing people think out loud. I like the Cora gave me this one last week. When you're doing a demo, it's either a product demo or a troubleshooting demo. I get a lot of value out of troubleshooting demos. When things don't go right, I get a lot of value out of how did you get to the solution? How did you troubleshoot?
Yeah.
But I like having that type of content on in the background. There's no substitute for reps. There's infinite ways to get to where you want to go, but there's no shortcuts. The only way to get better at doing Spring is by doing Spring.
Yep. And I put this in the free code camp course. We had a specific domain that we were working with, but I said, this doesn't matter. You're going to follow along with me and type these things out. You need to come back and apply this to something you're interested in. If you like to cook, create a recipe API using this similar format. If you like to lift weights, do something with lifting weights. Like you have to apply it to the things you're interested in or some kind of project that you're interested in. So
that makes it stickier, right? When you've got when you got a domain that matters to you, that's going to make it stickier. So whatever domain you picked, that was one of my other cheat codes. Is like I would automatically take that demo and I wouldn't follow the demo, using the orders, sales or whatever. I would always grab my own domain and switch it in. And I did that a lot with Greg's content. I also did that a lot with Craig Wall's content. I wasn't doing tacos. I was doing something else. It's just that's the way that I learn.
Yeah, and I think I've done that over the years with my blog, right? Like I could have easily picked a platform where I could just like push something out and write something and submit it. But I've always like built my own blog. I wanted to like build the infrastructure for it. I wanted to see how things worked underneath the hood. And again, like you said, that was something that was interesting to me. So it stuck. So
Ted says, if it matters to you, you'll be motivated to push through the frustrating troubleshooting points, right? If it's something that you're going to get value of, in the end, you're going to be more motivated to push through. And when you're pushing through those frustrating parts, that's where the value add is. That's where the personal growth happens.
yeah.
That's where you're going to learn.
Cool. So I guess another thing we could talk about here is, we mentioned this when we started putting this list together is this is kind of a general broad landscape of things you want to learn in Spring.
Not
I would
exhaustive.
say, yeah, not exhaustive, but I would also say, like, if you want to learn a specific thing, be very mindful of that and have some intent there. So if you want to learn about reactive programming, right? Don't go through and read the entire Spring Framework documentation and the Spring Boot documentation. I mean, that's just going to be like overwhelming to you. For me, I'm going to go into the documentation and pick the sections on reactive and start to go through those. Then when I have a general understanding of that, maybe I'll pick up Josh's book on reactive Spring, right? Then maybe there's some YouTube channels that have covered some of these things. So I'm not telling anybody nothing they don't know, but like this list that we have is pretty big. So try to target in on exactly what you're trying to learn. Because as we always say, Spring can do so many things. You have to be very focused. You have to understand what you're trying to focus on and kind of go from there. So
fantastic.
Cool. I like this list.
The other thing that I'm sharing with, customers, community is like, how do you learn? And maybe you've heard this. The best way to learn something is to teach it. Teach it. So one of the things I've been encouraging communities and people that I'm working with is, you want to learn about reactive Java? Write something. Try to teach it. Try to teach it to somebody. Try to teach it to somebody on your team. If you're coming here and you're learning about resources, like compile your list and try to teach that to the next group. But the best way to learn is to teach. I like to do that as well, but I'm encouraging community members, if you're learning something new, do it in public, right? Try to teach it. And you're going to find out where your gaps are. You're going to find out where your strengths are. And that's another way of learning. And I think that one, make it sticky.
To teach something is to learn it twice. You got to learn it the first time just to comprehend it. And then you have to learn it in detail to teach it back to someone else.
I like that.
I like this comment. This is kind of right on point. The comment here in the live chat is where to learn about the new Spring AI integration. So this is a great, hey, I have one specific thing I want to focus on. I would start at the documentation, go into the Spring.io project, go to the Spring AI documentation. That's one really good place to start. I would also look at the Spring.io blog because there are, hey, this is the newest release. Here's the new features in this release. You could also look at the GitHub repos associated with Spring AI because there's probably examples in there, right? So this is the thought process of, okay, now once I've done that, there's not any books on Spring AI yet, but there are like YouTube channels. I know Coffee Software, Josh Long has covered some Spring AI stuff. I know DaShaun has done some stuff with Spring AI. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Craig Walls. I don't know if we've added him to the YouTube list, but Craig Walls has done some stuff with Spring AI. So this is kind of my thought process of where to go with like a specific topic.
So I have not yet read, and I'm just sharing how I learn. I have not yet read the Spring AI documentation. I read it, on the section where I'm struggling, where I'm trying to do, but I haven't read it all. Yeah. And obviously I'm getting these channel feeds, I'm getting the blog posts, and I'm getting the YouTube videos. But my next thing where I go for those recent examples to change somebody's domain to the one that's valuable for me is I'm pulling things from GitHub repos, right? Yeah. From Habuma, and I got another one from Alexander. But that's where I'm learning, and everybody's going to learn different. But this is what you just outlined. Like, this is an example of how you're going to use these resources, have these book links or these bookmarks in your back pocket, And when something comes up, the next thing you need to learn, this is kind of what you're going to do. This is, I think, a great game plan.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was like a live use case for some of
Yeah.
these. I got another really good comment here from JitterTed. Sometimes debugging through the Spring code itself can be really useful here. I showed how to do this in one of my videos. And yeah, this is a really great resource. So I just did a video recently on how to create your own custom Spring Boot starter. And if you want to understand like how auto configuration works, one of the best places to look is in the Spring code and look at like all the different auto configurations that Spring Boot writes for you, and be able to dive through that and go, okay, this is a good example of it. So that's for me a /GitHub/Spring source code type of thing.
Fantastic.
Love it though. Got another question here. Where can I learn about how Spring loads bean definitions and how it later creates beans from those definitions? So this is really kind of understanding at a level like, what is doing this for me? And for me, this is a core concept of the Spring framework. Spring is an IOC and version of control framework, dependency injection. So this is a core feature of Spring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to spring.io/projects. I'm going to find Spring framework. I'm going to find the reference documentation. That's broken up into sections. I think one of them is like core features. So you may be able to find like bean definitions in there somewhere. I would start there. And I think, especially with something like this, the documentation is really good. Like I still have not gone through all this documentation because there's so much of it. And it is like, that's pretty detailed on like how some of this stuff works. So I think that'd be my first place to do that. And I think you'll most likely find your answer there.
Absolutely. I hope you guys aren't hearing those beeps that are going on in my ear. I tried to turn off.
I don't hear anything.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
I got another comment here. Spring microservices, Spring Cloud book recommendations. So yeah, I think we have that on there. Cloud native Spring.
Yep. No, I didn't put that on here. That is definitely
one. Sorry.
Cloud native. Oh, I did. I said cloud native Java. That's the one with Kenny and Josh.
Yes.
Right. That's a great one.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
That's probably where I would start. But yeah,
but
also
cloud native
Spring in action.
Yep, that's the one with Thomas Vitale. So yeah, those two are really great ones. And then I think also like, understanding like this is a really good place to start in Spring, but like if you realize that like, hey, I want to dive deep on microservices, there's a whole nother world out there on like books on just general microservices. So the question on Spring AI was like, how can I use Spring AI? Yes, these are some resources that I have, but if you dive in there and you're like, what is generative AI? What is an LLM? What is deep learning? What are machine learning? Now we're talking about broader scopes of just artificial intelligence. I'm a big fan of O'Reilly publishing, all the O'Reilly books. So I usually start there. I go to them. I usually don't go to my local bookstore for that kind of specific book.
It's changed.
It is.
So this is the topic right here, right? Where in early in my career, I'd run into a problem at work. Literally on the way home, I'd go by the bookstore, I'd pick up a book, and then I'd go and try to figure it out on the way. Yep. But we're in the 2000s, right? We're not in the 1900s anymore. We're in the 2000s, and the access that we have, not just to the information, but to the people, has changed. If you didn't know, we're here. We work with the Spring team, like they're right down the virtual hall, and you have access to us. When you run into something, you don't have to go find the book. You have a channel like this. You can ask questions, and if we're lucky, some of you have taken advantage of that, and you've reached out to Dan, you've reached out to myself. We are here to help you. We're here at your service. So if you're not getting the content, you're not getting the stuff that you need, this is where you ask. And we can help you. We can provide an overall list of where to go. But we've got a lot of, we have a lot of calendar that isn't full. And we would love to make sure that you're getting to the milestones that you need to get to. We're here to help.
Great. So I really love this list we put together, DaShaun. I think our next step is, like I said, we will take this, put this into a GitHub repo. I'm not sure where yet. We'll talk about that. And then we'll mention this on the next version of the next episode of Spring Office Hours. And yeah, we'd love to make this interactive as it was today. We'd also love to get some contributions from you. So if you want to contribute to it, we will be open to PRs on that. And this will just be a good resource that the next time we're on a Spring Office Hours and somebody hasn't seen this episode and says, hey, how can I learn Spring? We can point them back to that. We can point them back to this episode.
Yeah, that would be valuable.
Yeah, so I think that's great. So anything else? You got anything else you want to talk about, or can we wrap this show
This
up?
is so much. We got a whole lot further than what I was expecting. I have my defaults. Everybody's going to learn different. But yeah, having a starting point where people can go and look, I think we've done a great job of capturing, like, these are some great resources. Not exhaustive.
Awesome. Not exhaustive. Yep. Really good place to start. Okay. So I just want to kind of mention, we've mentioned this a couple other times before, but if you are listening to us on a podcast somewhere, please do us a big favor and leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to us on. This helps us out immensely. We actually just crossed a really big number of downloads. We crossed over 5,000 downloads of this podcast. Yeah. And we just started kind of putting this into a podcast format. So that is really exciting. If we can get some more feedback there, that would be really awesome. With that, we will, I think, next week. Yes, we are here next week. So we are going to be here next week. We will get that posted soon. We look forward to seeing you in that episode. And with that, happy coding, friends.
Thanks. See ya.